Like, why would I stay in pretty much the most expensive city in the planet to live on, which is Vancouver? And it's the only time of the year where you can just wander around and do that. And you're doing it at night. So much history, the end of the cultivating season and the harvest. And Halloween is perhaps the most magical night of the year for me, and that ability to participate. And for one night a year, we're not strangers, we're neighbors.
Yeah. Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
Welcome to High Strangeness. I'm Tony, and Halloween is just around the corner. The nights are starting to get colder, the shadows a little longer, and tonight we're diving headfirst into a cauldron of mystery, madness, and the unexpected with a very special guest. He's the brilliant mind behind a new collection of thrilling tales and savage twists, and a book with spine-tingling stories called It Came from the Trees and Other Violent Aberrations. So grab your flashlight, check your closet twice, and join us for our conversation tonight. Please join me in welcoming Joel McKay. Joel, how's it going, my friend?
Good. Great to be here, Tony. Thanks for having me.
For sure. I'm excited for our conversation, and it's great to have you on. Now, you are joining us from, is it British Columbia today?
Yeah, northern British Columbia, a little city called Prince George, about halfway up the province.
Nice. How do you like it up there?
I love it. I'm a Vancouver boy, born and raised, which also I had a bunch of family in Seattle. So if you're not as familiar with Vancouver, then and you are familiar with Seattle, I spent a lot of time growing up there. So I'm a coastal boy. I grew up with temperate climate, and then I moved up here about 13 years ago. For the hunting and the fishing, and had to learn to adjust to a place that gets a long, cold winter.
Yeah.
But it's lovely, man. Being a city boy, used to being surrounded by millions of people, it's actually really nice to live in a place with less than 100,000 people. And
yeah.
There's some real benefits for it. I mean, everybody always pushes you in the direction of go bigger cities, get busy, all those things. And for me, I'm kind of liking this. I think I'll stick around up here.
It sounds great. So I moved here to Utah for college, and it was smaller, less congested at the time, but it sure has grown here. And I find myself and a good friend of mine who lives out here, who is also from back east. We talk sometimes, and it's like, we kind of want to go somewhere a little lower keyed than where we are at the moment. There's definitely some benefits to that. So that's awesome.
There is. I mean, I think you get to a certain point in life, and like I like the art scene, and I like getting out and seeing plays and sports games and whatever else, right? And especially the national leagues. But you're not doing that every day. Like even when you live in a city, what are you doing every day? Well, you're shopping for groceries, you're going home, you're making dinner, like you're going to the gym, you're going to local parks, you're doing all this, going to big box stores, going to regular restaurants, whatever it is. And so it occurred to me a bunch of years ago, I was like, well, wait a minute, like, why would I stay in pretty much the most expensive city in the planet to live on, which is Vancouver, when I can go and reduce my cost of living, and I'm only an hour flight away, and then anytime I want to go to a hockey game or baseball game or whatever it is, I'll just fly down, and I'll have the money to do it because I'm not house poor anymore. So, and I don't have to deal I don't have to deal with traffic. I don't know what traffic is like around Salt Lake these days, but Vancouver, I mean, it takes you an hour to go 10 kilometers, so it's I kind of like being in a place where everything is 5 minutes away.
Yeah, I really think that's awesome, And, being there, so how far from the coast are you? So you said it gets a little cold there still, huh?
It does, yeah. So interestingly, we in Canada, it might be the same in the States, but we measure distances in hours. So how long it takes to drive anywhere, right? So I'm 8 hours from the coast here to get out to Prince Rupert. It's about 800 kilometers. It's a ways. So it's a day trip, and lots of people do it for the fishing. So yeah, we're in an interior plateau, so pretty far north, about around the 54th parallel, I think, is about where we are, and interior. So it can get in the winter down to minus 45, minus 50. it never lasts long though. I think the coldest
Yeah.
I've seen is -48, and I've you get that for a few days and then it warms up and you're back into the -20s, right? And so it's, pretty tolerable. But you
Yeah.
definitely, it's not like Vancouver where you could golf 10 months a year. So
Right.
yeah, different lifestyle.
That's crazy. I have my son-in-law's brother has moved up into Alaska in the middle of nowhere. So
Oh yeah.
he was asked to go up there to rebuild the cabin,
Hmm.
and to do that, he was given land. So he's up there where there's almost nobody, and he loves it. And
Yeah.
same thing. He's like, I don't need people. I'm loving this.
Yeah. Well, this isn't that. He is
Right.
he is like probably a 5-day drive north of here. And so, when I say the north, true northerners like from Alaska or Yukon or whatever, they always kind of laugh and smirk because, we say the north, but it's, to them not so much.
So, yeah.
But yeah, you definitely see more of these stories now. Maybe it's just because of things like YouTube and reality TV where there's people decamping to some of these remote locations. And I've seen a few on Alaska where they go up there and they're living off the land, building a cabin, and
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. Like, it's not for me. I still like to live in a place, I always joke, where I can get a pizza delivered. But I appreciate it as an outdoors enthusiast because I can drive 10 minutes out of town and I'm into a vast, pretty well untouched wilderness. I get it. I get why you like being up there and out there, right? And it's cool to have 4 seasons. On the Pacific coast, you don't really you get a rainy season and a less rainy season, at least the North Pacific coast. So it's a bit more here, actually like the East. You get a proper winter, you get a proper summer, proper fall, proper spring, right? So it's kind of nice.
Yeah. Well, before I get into anything with you, is there lore of Bigfoot out in your area there? Because
Yeah, the entire,
really,
oh yeah. Yeah, the
Yeah.
entire province. British Columbia is known for Sasquatch. That's what we call it in this area. But I mean, that whole landscape of BC extends down into Idaho, northern Utah, Montana, Wyoming, Washington, right? So, and I know in Idaho they have sightings of it too, same with Montana. But yeah, definitely coastal British Columbia has lots of sightings of Sasquatch. And then in the interior, and there's even stories in the national parks, Jasper and Banff, of sightings over the years. And you kind of get it because there up here there's 100 kilometers between every town, and it's 100 kilometers of really like just wilderness, and there's only a couple of highways that cut through it, so there is thousands upon thousands of square kilometers that are really just wilderness, right? It's easy to get lost out there. It's easy for things to go unnoticed. So despite all of the industrial activity, there's, still lots of places that people don't really get to or don't touch very often. So I think those stories persist on a lot of that basis, right?
Yeah. Well, very cool. Joel, I'm jealous. That's awesome.
Well, come on up.
Let's see.
Come on
I
up
know.
and check it out,
I
man.
thought you might say that, and I'm going to
Yeah.
say, but my wife wouldn't come.
No, probably not. Yeah.
No, but it does seem really cool. I mean, one can hope, right?
One can
hope,
hope.
I
Yeah,
guess.
you never know when that's what happened to me. I was a journalist in Vancouver, and the beat that I covered just ended up, a lot of this stuff was based up here. So that's how I ended up here.
Wow.
It was work.
Okay.
So I came up for 3 or 4 trips before I kind of fell in love with the place and was like, yeah, that's the direction I want my life to go. That's what I'm looking for.
Awesome.
But yeah, if you'd asked me when I was a city boy before I started traveling up here, would I ever move into, quote unquote, northern Canada, I would have said, not on your life.
No way.
Yeah, no way. No way, man. Not doing it.
That's so funny. Well, we evolve. That's true.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you do change, right? Your priorities change over time.
Yeah. Well, Joel, you've got maybe more, but I see you have at least 3 books, right, that you've
Yep.
done. And so are you now full-time or part-time author?
Part-time still. And I mean, if it made me a bunch of money one day, perhaps. I used to be a full-time writer. So I was a journalist for a number of years. That's what I'm formally trained in. And so, both freelance and working for newspapers. And So I know that life of
Yeah.
writing and making deadlines. Obviously, writing fiction is a lot different and a lot more difficult to find a gig. There's a part of me, though, after having done the journalism thing, that even if I sold a million copies of one of my books, I'm not sure I'd go back to it full time. I love writing. I'll never stop writing. It is what I think ultimately I was put on the earth to create.
Mm.
But I've got this other itch I've always got to scratch to get like involved in issues, and so I've been in public service. When I left journalism, I got into public relations, and then I became a CEO of a development trust, and now I'm a city manager. So I have
Oh, wow.
the fun task of actually looking after a small city in this neck of
That's
the woods,
cool.
and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that
So
is
I
cool.
like that balance. The truth is, I don't sell enough copies to really make a choice. I do okay, but don't
Yeah,
sell enough copies yet. But that was never why I got into it anyway. That wasn't really what
sure.
I was after. I quite happy with my main career, and I'll keep pumping out fiction and getting better, and hopefully keep finding readers.
Yeah, and to have two sides of your world, right? Like you have what you do for a living, and then you have something like this that just expresses the other part of your
Yeah,
mind. It's just a good thing, right?
it
It's just a really
is.
good thing.
It is right. I mean, even if you're not going to go down the road of publishing, I think the if you have a creative bone in your body, I think you're obligated if you can, if you don't have
Yeah.
other disabilities or impairments in your life that are stopping you from getting at it, then I think you are obligated to do that thing. And so I felt about 8 years ago that I was obligated and I needed to get back at it and I needed to get better at it and take it more seriously, even though it was a kind of a side hustle. If for no other reason than it's like, working out. Like you need to
Right.
exercise your body. You need to get a sweat on. It's good for your mind. It's good for your health. All those things. Well, I think art's the same way. I think it feels to me the same way. You have to stretch that muscle. You have to make it sweat, and like that puts you into a good place. I mean, I guess what I'm coming at to be more direct is, whether it's exercising or writing, both stave off depression. And
Yeah.
so, and I'm cognizant of that. And so, like for me, it's habitual now, right, to stay in a good frame of mind.
Yeah. Well, I like the way you described that. Thank you for doing that. I know I have some listeners that really love when I talk to authors and just get these cool nuggets of a way to think about their life and how they write, how they approach things. I know they enjoy that. So that's really good. And I like hearing about it. So thanks for sharing that. Well, I want to ask you kind of a random question here. How is Halloween up there in Prince George? Do they even do it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Halloween is big in Canada. Big, big.
Nice.
And particularly in British Columbia. So all my life, Halloween's been a big deal. And in British Columbia, Halloween is the day of the year when fireworks go off.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so Canada, I'm not as familiar with back east. I think it's mostly the same, but I know in the case of BC, like it's when I was growing up in Vancouver, it was like a war zone that smelled like gunpowder when you went out on Halloween night of just
Wow.
cool mist and big leaves and fireworks going off everywhere and people in costume trick or treating, people out fitting their houses and all kinds of stuff. And that really impacted me as a kid. It felt like this one night a year where your world was transformed into something magical. In
Yeah.
some ways, more than Christmas. I'm a big fan of Christmas too, but simply because you were out in it and everybody was participating, and it wasn't bureaucratic. It was just understood growing up that yeah, you decorate for Halloween, you get a bowl of candy. There's kids that are going to come to your house, complete strangers. You're going to give them candy. You're not going to poison them. And everybody's going to have a good time. It's the only time of the year where you can just wander around and do that. And you're doing it at night, and you're doing it on this sacred night that
Yeah.
has, so much history in cultures around the world around it, of the end of the cultivating season and the harvest, and that thinning moment that some of us believe in between the spirit world and our world that takes place. And so for me, Halloween is, I mean, it's not technically a holiday. You don't get
Yeah.
the day off, but It's always been perhaps the most magical night of the year for me, and that ability to participate. And so when I moved here to Prince George, I was happy to find that it is the same as in Vancouver. And we live in a cool neighborhood where it's one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city, and it's got massive cottonwood and birch trees that sort of form domes over the streets. And
Oh,
all the
so neat.
houses are different, big lots, mature. And so, when you get to that time of year in October, when all the leaves are down and they're on the ground, and it's dark and the air is crispy and cool, it's going to freeze overnight, and you're walking amongst that, and the shadows play differently at night, and there's kids running around having a good time, there's fireworks going off, there's people at home watching movies and all kinds of stuff. Like, you really feel it. You really feel
Oh,
that
yeah.
layer of spirituality and place. And so it's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And
Boy.
I have kids. I've got a 10-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old daughter, and they love it. They embrace it alongside me. And
Yeah,
so,
that's what I
yeah.
was going to ask. How's the family? They're into it too. That's
Yeah, they're
awesome.
into it too. They all know Dad is a horror author, so they don't get into it to my extent. And like, I'm not like nuts and crazy like or anything like that. It's a pretty normal sort of suburban house for us of, carving jack-o'-lanterns and roasting seeds, and got some decorations up and that
Hmm.
kind of thing. But yeah, they love it. Obviously, they get a bag full of candy. I mean, who isn't like
Oh,
that?
yeah.
You get to dress up. But even they'll watch, they're old enough now where they'll watch some of the black and white horror movies from the 30s and 40s with me, which I like to
Yes.
do every year, and do that. So that's pretty fun.
Well, Joe, we're of the same brotherhood here with this. I love Halloween the same way. And you're talking about your neighborhood, and I'm just getting excited for it. I'm just like, you know, there's nothing better than that. It's really so cool.
It
I've got
is.
kids myself that have now, they're all married and grown up, but it's all rubbed off on them. And in
Yeah.
fact, the whole month of October, we do something almost every weekend with the kids or the grandkids where it's all about that. It's just fun all the way around.
It is. It's the two things I go back to as I get older is it's such an excuse to do fun things with family
Yep.
outside of the summer season. Go walk
Yeah.
in a corn maze, go do like a hay ride, or whatever it is, get hot chocolate somewhere, all that fun stuff, and in the preparation for it at all. And then again, there's that social element of it that it always occurs to me where, again, like, none of us have really signed up for this, but we all do it. It's not organized.
Right.
Everybody does it, and it's understood. And for one night a year, we're not strangers. We're neighbors,
Yes.
and that's pretty cool. It's special. It's neat, and I think it needs to be, like, I don't want to get religious about this, but I do think that should be protected because there's not many things like that in life, right? Where we can
Agreed.
have that level of community and enjoy it. And I think
Yes.
my appreciation for it has grown. Probably sounds like similar to you as I had kids. There's
Yep.
another layer to it now that's beyond what I even enjoyed.
Yes, it is. It's amazing. Love it. Oh, I'm getting excited for it already.
Me too.
Well, yeah, it's so cool. Well, look, Joe, let's jump into some stuff here now. The cover of your book, pretty creepy. I love it. I really like it.
Yeah.
Right? And it seems perfect for like the wooded area out your way, right? Like
Yeah.
learning this about where you're from. This was that your idea, or is that, like as you're working with your team to put out the book, did somebody else come with that?
Yeah, that was I was really fortunate enough to work with Keelan Patrick Burke on the cover design, and he also did the interior illustrations. Keelan's a heck of a good writer. If you haven't read his stuff, if you like horror, yeah, like really, really good writer. But he's also a
Nice.
designer and an artist. And I hunted around for this one a bit. I was trying to figure out, how do I get a cover for a short anthology? Like, what do you lead with, right? And so I reached out to him. I didn't know him. I reached out to him and I said, hey, like, this is who I am and understand who you are, and are you interested in working together? And he jumped on it. So we did the
That's
cover.
nice.
The cover is a reflection of, yeah, the place. You nailed it. And the lead story, which is the titular, It Came from the Trees, which is set in this area. And then in the interior, the book was designed very thoughtfully to reflect those old spin rack paperbacks that you would have found at like your local, like if you're out camping in the 70s or 80s or 90s and you went into the general store in some town, they had a spin rack of little paperback novels or comic books or something. This is the kind of thing you'd find there from an author you've probably never heard of.
That's cool.
Collection of stories, you know, pretty affordable to buy, and you read it by, you know, flashlight. That's where you start.
Yeah.
And so it was designed that way, with the cover, with it being short, only 5 stories, different types of stories, and then having an illustration at the front of every story that kind of captures an image from that story. And there's author notes too at the end of every story. So, which is something I've always enjoyed. If you engage with a story, then you get a bit of a view into, well, what the heck was I thinking when I created this? What is this about? What is it not about? And as a reader, you get to compare your own sort of thoughts with what the author was thinking.
Love that.
They line up, right? So very purposeful in engaging with Keelan. Couldn't be happier with his work. And then he was really on board for this bigger idea of, you know, multiple illustrations and what this book was going to be.
Yeah, that's so cool. What inspired you to actually do it? I mean, how were you like, you know, hey, it's time. I'm itching. I need to do it. Or
yeah. So I'd written It Came from the Trees, which is a novelette. And my previous book was a novella. So I had this novelette that just wasn't long enough to release on its own.
Can you define that for the listeners?
Yeah, so a novella is going to be, you know, 20 to, you know, 50,000 words is going to be a novella. A novelette's going to be 10 to 20, roughly. And then a short story is 0 to, or is 1,000 to 10,000, and a micro is 0 to 1,000. That's kind of roughly, I think. So I had this novelette, and my previous book was a novella. It was a werewolf comedy, and I had published that in 22. And this one, It Came from the Trees, was, I actually really liked it, and it just wasn't long enough. So I started thinking to myself, I'm like, well, there's not a great market out there for novelettes. Like, there just isn't. Like, you'll spend 3 or 4 years, you know, pitching. It's not like short stories where, you know, there's, you know, some regular cadence and ability to sell, or even novels for that matter. So I was like, you know, I should group this thing up. And, you know, what else do I have that's unpublished? And so I had this other collection of stories. I had 4 others on top of it. And I started to think about it a bit like, then I got into this idea of thinking about it a bit like a music album, right? Which is, okay, does this track go well with that track? In what order should it go? Does it fit? Does it not fit? Not everything fit. And then what is it? And then when I came up with the 5 and I looked at it, I'm like, spin rack. I'm like, that's what this is. That's what I'm creating. And then I knew at that point in time that was it, that there was going to be a titular, longer story, 4 shorter stories behind it, bit of a potpourri, all a little bit different, but tied together through this, I think, persistent feeling of dread in every story. And so that is, and then that is the other part of the title, and other violent aberrations.
Yeah. Love it. I mean, it feels perfect for Halloween, right? It really does.
Well, it is.
But Halloween especially, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's an afternoon read. Like, and it was purposefully done that way. Like, it's just 2.5 hours, right? To pick it up and to front to back. And that was purposeful too, because I really like anthologies. I love reading short fiction, but I know that that's usually the, you know, literary nerds like me tend to engage with short fiction more so than the broader audience, which like novels if they're reading. And so I already knew I was cutting from a slimmer audience, and so I was like, well, then why don't you just lean into that and make it super slim? It doesn't need to be 300. It doesn't need to have 20 stories. Make it 5. Yeah. Make it easy. Make it accessible. Make it a doorway into what you're creating, and then point people in the direction of, you know, some of your other work if they want to find it, right? And I fully assume, you know, as with any anthology, for every reader, some stories are going to be liked, some stories aren't, right? And that's just the nature of that too, right? So there's no expectation here around, oh, if you like one, you got to love all of Joel's stories. Well, no, they're, you know, some are going to land differently than others.
Yeah. Hey there, listeners. What is the one book or story you try to read or are afraid to read around Halloween? Do you have one? Or is there one that you have been planning to read? Tell us about it. Share that in the comments. Back to the show. That makes sense. Do you have a favorite creepy story or urban legend type thing that actually influenced any of the tales?
I would say maybe not an urban legend, but it was the idea that gave birth to the titular story. It came from the trees. And are you an X-Files fan?
I do. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
Do you remember season 1? I'm going way back now.
I don't know if I'll remember.
Okay, there's this episode where Mulder and Scully end up in the woods and they get these loggers have cut down these big old trees and they release this parasite that actually it's like flies that like wrap them up and cocoon them and kill them.
I remember this. Yeah.
Okay, so it's one of the more terrifying episodes in the entire series, in my opinion. It's season 1, which was filmed in Vancouver. The first 5 seasons were. So for me, X-Files is special because I was growing up when they were filming those. And Darkness Falls scared the living daylights out of me when I was a kid. It would have aired in 1993 or early 94, which would have made me, 8, 9 years old. So fairly young, but I was watching it and not sleeping.
Good for you.
And that partially because of my older brother. He insisted on these things. But that always stuck with me. And I was like, how do I get back and tell a story like that? And then it linked up for me a few years ago where, back to your question around urban legend. So we had one of the most devastating ecological incidents occur in northern BC and all of North America in recorded history over the last 20 years. And it's called the mountain pine beetle epidemic. And mountain pine beetle are natural. They burrow into pine trees and eat them. But there was a combination of too many pine trees from our forest practices and too warm of winters for a period of time. And they killed about 80% of the lodgepole pine in northern BC. And you used to be able to, in the early 2000s, if you flew over northern BC, the forest was red, just dead. And so that really changed the face of northern BC in so many ways, in terms of, what people were doing for work, what that work looked like, even the landscape. Like the big golf course here in town used to have trees on it, and it doesn't now because they were all had to be cut down because they were dead. And so those two things came together, and it came from the trees. And one of them was, how do you write about this beetle epidemic? And then is there a way through that structure of Darkness Falls? And that's the idea. So without giving too much away, the story is about a group of tree planters, which is a pretty common thing in this part of the world, probably where you are too. And they're out doing their thing, and they disturb a nest of this parasitic beetle. And then it becomes a bit of a body horror, running in the night, trying to survive, kind of thing. And it's terrifying. It does not end well. I can tell you that. But it weaved together pine beetle, weaved together a bit of that lore and ode to X-Files, which had this British Columbia mark on it because it was in our woods. And then just spending time out in the wilderness as a fly fisherman here and a hiker in northern BC. Yeah, man, when you're out there, past dark, late at night, camping, and there's no one for 100 kilometers in any direction, it can be a little unnerving, right? And you start, as a creative, you start getting ideas in your head, which may or may not be true.
Right.
Mostly it's just the grizzly bears and wolves that you have to worry about. But, there I am thinking, what else is out there, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, one of the questions I was going to ask you is, but I think it's a hard question, so maybe it's not a good question because it's subjective. Everybody's going to feel differently, right? But I was going to ask you what you thought might be the scariest for the reader, but really, maybe that's not a great question because what you're describing right there is freaky, scary, right? Hey there, audience. What's your favorite October film or movie that you like to watch each year to get you into the mood? Let us know. Share it in the comments. Now back to the show.
Yeah, I mean, probably it came from the trees. if not the final story, which is a weird western called "At the Spider God's Altar." And it's the second story featuring a character that was first written about in a weird western horror anthology that Bridget's Gate Press put out in the U.S. a couple of years ago now, 3 years ago. So it's a follow-up to a luckless cowboy who keeps running into paranormal incidents as he's trying to survive the Old West. And in that one, he ends up on a cult ship sailing across like a sailing ship, but it's sailing across a sea of grass towards a Lovecraftian cosmic horror. And there's sacrifice and blood and all kinds of monsters on the side of the ship, all kinds of stuff. It's nasty, and it was purposefully written to be nasty and violent and dark. And so I think that one, including the gargantuan spider that's in it, probably, strikes some fear. As you can tell, there's a theme here: insects.
Yeah.
They scare the hell out of me. So
Well, here's the thing. This may answer the question I was going to ask next, which is, what scares you the most out there, right? And did that creep into your book here?
yeah.
And it sounds like the bug thing is
Yeah.
is pretty hard, right? It's pretty
Yeah,
scary
it
thing.
is.
Yeah.
It is. It's funny. All the time I've spent out in the wilderness, like I carry bear mace and occasionally I'll carry a firearm for protection or whatever it is. But I don't worry so much about the grizzly bears and the moose and the wolves anymore. I worry about the hornets' nests that are in like a rotten log or in the ground. Because if you disturb one of those, like you are in for it, man.
Yeah.
And so it's a weird thing, but that's actually what I worry about. And so that is that insect thing coming back, right? Or like kicking, or suddenly kicking over, because we get these gargantuan anthills that are, like 3 or 4 feet across, and like, it's like, what if you kicked one of those over,
Yeah.
it just, there's something in all of that. I mean, you're always constantly being bitten up here in the summer too, whether it's horseflies, black flies, or mosquitoes. So I think there's a part of me that is like, yeah, that being out there and something getting you that is small and is either a swarm or you can't really see coming, you couldn't dodge if you wanted to. As a grizzly bear is terrifying, of course, but I mean, you kind of see it. So it's a little different, right? So yeah, that's the kind of thing that scares me. The other thing that I find unnerving is this idea of being alone out in it. And you can do that in urban environments just as effectively if you know how to structure it. But I think because so much of my fiction is place-based, and northern BC bleeds into it, the Canadian landscape bleeds into it. Our geography and our climate are really important characters, I think, in Canadian literature. And you see it pop up. Often, so often directly, sometimes indirectly or subtly, but it's always playing a role. And I think that might be, if I put on my literary hat for a second, or my psychology hat of a national identity, it is this quiet obsession or awareness, understanding of that a good portion of the year, every year in Canada, the air is trying to kill you. Right? The landscape is rough and it's very dangerous, and it doesn't take long for things to go really bad and get quite dangerous. Even just driving on the winter highways or summer highways for that matter, right? So I think those things play in, and they scare me. They scare a lot of people, and so I find a way to bake those in. And I think when it comes to horror, I follow the advice of the masters, which is write about what scares you.
Yeah.
Right. And try to find and create characters that people can relate to, and then put something in front of them that they have to overcome, or whether it's themselves or a physical or both, and then see what happens. And it came from the trees. That's what it is. It's okay, yeah, this isn't a normal day at work out in the woods. Okay, now what are you all gonna do? And my first book was like that too. It was very much okay, now there's werewolves. Now what are you gonna do?
Right. That's so cool. Well, as we're thinking about all of this, right? Like, it depends on the reader, right? The reader in their mind, all these things can visualize, right? In a very cinematic way, maybe. When they're
Mm-hmm.
reading these things, they just see this. If
Yeah.
you could adapt one of your stories into a movie, a film of some sort, which one would you pick? And what would be the tone?
Yeah. Man, you put a good question on my mind because I'm just going through the five that are in this one. If it was in this one and I was trying to get bums in seats to a summer scare fest, it would be It Came from the Trees. It's such an
Yeah.
obvious, terrifying story. But there's another story that I wrote that's actually set down not far from your neck of the woods, and it was in an anthology. It's called Shambling Gary, and it was published by Slay House 2024, I think it came out. Anyway, the story is it takes place over about 100 years, and it follows a couple of guys from southern Idaho who go up into northern BC searching for gold. Not an uncommon thing.
Yeah.
And one kills the other, and you're hearing his version of it because he's the survivor, and he goes on to become a billionaire. Moves back to Idaho. He's not a good husband. He's not. He's kind of greasy and becomes very very wealthy. But throughout the rest of his life, Gary, who he killed, keeps showing up. And he keeps finding more and more interesting ways to kill Gary and try and stop Gary until he realizes that he can't stop Gary. The ghoul keeps coming back no matter what. He can blow him up, he can incinerate him, cut off his head. The ghoul always comes back, and he always finds this person that killed him to try and exact his revenge. And he's slow moving, like you can easily avoid him if you want to. And later in life, he decides to find interesting ways to kill Gary and make it kind of a pastime. And then he realizes he can't, and because he uses all of his money and does a calculation. He says, well, I killed Gary here, so it'll take him 3 years to walk across the ocean to find me if I move to wherever. So he does that. And then he ends up spending the last couple of years of his life almost entirely in the air. Never really lands, just so he can always avoid Gary. Because Gary's come to get him. Until at the very end of the story, he decides, and he's like 100 years old, to hire somebody to help him, and he's going to hike back up to the cabin where he killed Gary. And then you get the real story around what actually happened. And there's a bit of a love story in there, not between these two, but about a female character. It's a fight over a female character. And he I'll give the ending away, it's a short story, but then the last scene is him finally letting Gary's cold dead hands wrap around his neck in this cabin almost a century after he first killed Gary, and he's finally given up. And I liked that idea of the creature that can never die, that isn't hard to kill, but eventually it wears you down. That's the dread. That's what I'm talking about. Is that eventually time gets you, even if you can avoid, because you watch slashers, whether it's Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees or Freddy Krueger. I mean, they all have. There's always sort of a kryptonite for each one of them, right? Mm-hmm. And in the case of Gary, the only thing he really has on his side is time. But time gets all of us, and that's a terrifying concept, I think, when you wrap your head around it. And so I wanted to write that story, and I did. And Slay House was kind enough to publish it for me. And so that would be very difficult to adapt. But if you could do it, it would be amazing. That'd be cool. There's no other story like that I've ever come across before that uses time as the fear factor, really. Yeah. And by the end of it, I don't think you really know it as a reader until you get to the end of it, and you're like, oh yeah, I after that long, I probably would too. Because like, what are your options? To go to the International Space Station? Like, you don't, like, what else are you gonna do? Gary's gonna get you eventually, right? Time's gonna get you eventually.
Coming. Yeah. Well, you know what? With all of this innovation with AI, maybe in 5 years, you'll be able to just get some AI and make this thing remote, just make the
Oh,
movie yourself, right?
I've wondered that with AI, where this all goes, and I think you're right. I think that is where it goes. I
Yeah.
think the entire well, and I mean it's with the written word, it's with the illustrated art, and then it's with movies too. I think
Yeah.
like probably games too. It's at some
Yeah.
point where they're just gonna have AI games that populate the world as you go based on your decisions. It really opens up a canvas for artists in some ways, and in other
Yeah.
ways is a massively unnerving and fearful in and of itself. Because I think it's like, well, God, if AI can do it, what's the point of having the artist? And I'll still make the argument that I think only humans can truly connect with humans.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, we'll probably be there in a number of years,
Well,
and
I'm
we'll
going to go
see.
with I think and hope the AI augments the creator's
Yeah,
abilities to the
that's what
point
I'm
where
hoping too.
it makes projects reachable now.
Yeah, that's my hope too. Is
Yeah.
I'm trying to look at it with a lot of optimism, because I think I know the reality of it is the tech exists and there's no putting that cat back in the bag. It's not
Right.
happening. And
Right.
so there's just too many reasons and too much profit to be made for everybody to just say, hey, you know what? Let's just keep having, analog art creation, right? Not going to happen. And so then, therefore, our only hope is that it would augment. And I tend to think that's the case. There's been lots of professions that have disappeared over the years, but have become something else and created
True.
other opportunities alongside it, right? Human beings have
Yeah.
a bottomless well for creation and finding things to do with their time.
True. Yeah, it
Right?
just evolves into something else.
Yeah, yeah, that are
Very
valuable
true.
to others, right? And so, yeah,
Yeah.
this game will probably look different. There's no question about it, but it may not necessarily all be bad.
Yeah. Well, talking about movies, what's your favorite October? You and your family favorite October film? Do you guys have one?
Probably with the kids, it would be a Ghostbusters movie. And my eldest is really into The Creature from the Black Lagoon, which I'm a big fan of too.
Yeah.
For me, I would say I like the John Carpenter movies. So I love The Thing. I love The
Yeah.
Fog. I love Halloween. I love In the Mouth of Madness. Prince of Darkness. Like that stuff is like I'm usually watching of just those ones I listed off, probably at least three of those every year habitually.
Yeah.
And then I've got to do a couple of the big classics like The Shining or The Exorcist. And then I find new stuff. Hop on Shutter, try and find
Yeah.
weird stuff I've never seen, and like it's a whole thing, right? It's a whole,
Yeah.
it's a bit like Christmas, right? Where like Halloween night, we talked about that earlier. I mean, it is incredible and it's a good time, but almost as much fun as the build up through the
Yeah.
entire month, right?
So much. Yeah.
And I think, I mean, again, I'm not American, so I only know my own experience. But we have Thanksgiving in within like the first week and a half of October, and I
Mhm.
actually think it adds to the month.
Yeah.
So you kind of start off, you roll into October, you go right into Thanksgiving. So you're doing family time and a big meal and decorations and all that, and then it's kind of starts getting blended with Halloween a little bit, and so it's kind of it's a cool month in Canada if you're into it, right? If you like that.
Right. That's so cool. Let me ask you. Well, let's do this now, real quick. We've kind of talked about. So you have five stories: a three horror, fantasy, and a thriller sci-fi. We've
Yeah.
talked about two of them. Could you just do a short preview on the remaining ones, just so people are aware what are the five stories? So,
Yeah, so I'll recap. It Came from the Trees is the novelette. That's insect horror. At the Spider God's Altar is the fifth one. That's weird western. In there also is the second story is the sci-fi thriller, and it's called A 21st Century DB Cooper. And it basically it is about two physicists from a small northern Canadian university who invent teleportation, and the airline industry that wants them dead because they see it as a
nice.
threat to their entire sector, which it is. And so it becomes that's the thriller is
Cool.
the big bad airline industry. The third one is almost a bit of a young adult story, and it's about a couple of kids who travel to England under, a kind of questionable story, but they're there with their family to repatriate some carved masks, indigenous masks, which are a big part of coastal First Nations art in British Columbia. And they come across this private museum where some of their masks from their ancestors were held in England, in London, in Knightsbridge, and they break in to get them back. And then in there, they find that this is a pretty twisted museum, actually, that there's all kinds of different artifacts, occult and otherwise, that have been gathered there, including a Lovecraftian cosmic god that can wear the masks and turn into different things. And so it's that. So it's a bit of a young adult thriller, and then the story that is most different than all the others, but I absolutely want it in there, is a grimdark fantasy, and it is really about honor and trying to. It's called The Warrior's Task, and it tries to explain that or show that a warrior's responsibility is not just swinging a sword and cutting up monsters and all that thing, but a warrior's task is to look after people, to show up. That's actually what the warrior role is in culture, and we often, we conflate it with more superficial descriptions. And so it's a fantasy, and it's about an escaped pit fighter and slave who ends up getting caught up at this fortress in the mountains as a storm's coming in, and an army is advancing, and the soldiers are mutineers, and he falls for the commander, and so him and her try and defend this fortress for the night, and it's kind of that sort of found connection in an odd place and odd people at an odd time, and making choices around what you show up for and what you don't. And it's dark and it's violent, and there's the dread, which is that approaching army and being outnumbered and up in the mountains. So it fits the book, but it is definitely a grim dark fantasy, and like all the stories, is either set in or borrows the geography and place names of British Columbia. And I talk about that in the author notes at the end of each story.
Love it. Okay, so I want to say I like to give these suggestions out to the listeners. I'm going to suggest It Came from the Trees and other violent aberrations. That's what I'm going to suggest to people to read and get for this October Halloween month. How about for you? Do you have anything that you really love that you would like to suggest to, those out there that would really fit well into this time of the year?
Yes, I do. So John Langan, The Fisherman, or Corpse Mouth, and other autobiographies. The Fisherman is one of the best horror novels I've ever read in my life. It is unbelievable, like instant classic, should be studied in literary. It's an unbelievable book. Corpse Mouth and Other Autobiographies is Langan's. It's a collection of stories, and I only recently got onto his work, but just totally over the moon on it. And then anything by John Horner Jacobs, who is from the southern U.S., writes a lot of cosmic horror. His stuff is just he's my favorite right now in terms of authors that are out there creating horror. And then you can always go back to some of the real classics of horror from the mid 20th century. So Peter Straub, I read. It's a murder thriller, but it would be good for Halloween. It's set in just a post-Vietnam era. It's about Vietnam War vets, called Coco. Absolutely just phenomenal novel. It's the first in a trilogy that are all kind of loosely tied to one another. And then Stephen King, you can't go through the holidays without maybe picking up or watching one of his movies, picking up a short story. I would say go right back to the beginning, pick up one of his anthologies, since we're kind of on that topic here tonight. Night Shift would be it, or Skeleton Crew are just Fantastic. He had another one that was good that came out last year. It was an anthology called If It Bleeds. It's also a really, really good collection. His son, Joe Hill, one of my favorite collections from him is 20th Century Ghosts. And it's a really good collection of different stories that are perfect for the when the air is crisp and the nights are getting longer and
Yeah,
the noises are a bit
that's
odd.
great.
Yeah.
Joe, thanks so much. I appreciate that. And people, there you go. You've got a list of stuff you can go out and grab along with this book. And so I want to say once again, thanks, Joe, for everything. This has been great. Before we wrap this one up, though, what's next for you? Anything on the horizon? Any projects you're working on?
Yeah, I've got so my third novel is out. It's a young adult fantasy adventure. So if you buy It Came from the Trees and you like the fantasy story in it, The Warrior's Task, then you should go and buy The Dungeoneers and the Treasure of Rome. It is a classic action adventure, sword and sorcery, good times fantasy novel. So it's out. That's my release for this year. And in the not too distant future, I have written another novel. It's a cosmic horror. It's set in an abandoned pulp mill town on the surprise, surprise, British Columbia West Coast, rainy West Coast. And when I wrote it, it scared the daylights out of me. And now I'm back editing it and trying to make sure that that magic is still there. So I'm in the process of that right now. And then we'll have to find a publishing path for it and get it out there. So that'll probably be my next novel.
Nice. So how can people get those books? Is the best place just Amazon, or
Yeah, Amazon's actually
have a website?
Yeah, Amazon's the best place. If you're in Prince George, go into Books and Company because you can get them there. But yeah, Amazon, and then my website joelmckay.ca. Sign up for the newsletter. That's where you get the latest news and information on what's going on with me, what's coming out, and what I'm thinking about or doing at any given time. And you can find me on my socials on X at Joel C. McKay, and then on Instagram and Threads, author_Joel_McKay. And yeah, connect with me in any of those places, and go buy my stuff. And then I'll still be a city manager, but I'll have more beer money, so that's not a bad thing.
Well, look, this is great, and I'm excited about what you've done here. I'm glad we had a chance to talk. And for everyone else out there, It Came from the Trees and Other Violent Aberrations. That's what we've been talking about today, and this is exciting. So check it out, go grab it, and it sounds like you can get it done. You can read it pretty quick too. So, if you're like, oh, I don't have a lot of time here at the end of October, yes, you do. It'll just take one afternoon or two, and you'll have it. But for everybody else out there, thank you for being with us today, and I hope you have an amazing Halloween. If you like this kind of content and you like the variety of things that we provide here, please subscribe, hit the like button, and tell somebody about us. It really does help a newer or younger channel like this with what we do. Other than that, though, as we finish up, have an amazing Halloween. Like I said, everybody, Halloween season. And remember, there's a lot of strange and unexpected in our reality. So always keep your eyes, ears, and minds open. And until next time, stay safe. Thanks, Joel.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.